My name is Una Mulale. I was born in Botswana, in a small village in the center of the country. So my grandmother, my mother's mother, was paralyzed from the waist down. She had fallen off a car and broken her spine, and she had no access to medical care. So she had no wheelchair and absolutely no medical equipment whatsoever. And she lived in a very remote village in rural Botswana. Her and her husband adopted 4 children, one of whom was my mother, and they raised them on almost nothing but love. My grandmother was very hardworking, never ever complained about her disability, and I believe that my mother took after her. My mother was very compassionate, very kind, and she couldn't finish school because she grew up in extreme poverty. But she had a very keen business mind and was a very hard worker and a restorer of dignity and a lover of people. My father also grew up in extreme poverty in the northeastern part of Botswana, and he was the youngest child of the youngest wife. So my father's father had 4 wives. And so when my father's father died, there was pretty much no money to send my father to school. So he went to South Africa and worked in the mines, but he came back to Botswana because he believed that education would be his way out of poverty. So he worked very hard and studied via correspondence school, and ultimately got his high school diploma and went on to study for multiple degrees in different places around the world, and head the Botswana Police College. My parents didn't want us to lose our heritage, so even though they were very focused on educating us and we lived mainly in the city, they made sure that we visited our grandparents in the village quite often. And so we had this kind of mix of rural life and urban life in Botswana. In one place, in the city we went to school, and in the village we were literally just running around and playing under the big African skies, So it was a really incredible upbringing, and I really think it instilled in us humility and empathy and a connection with people of all different backgrounds. So after high school, I actually worked for a year in a village clinic in Botswana. We did everything from caring for HIV patients to caring for amputations and infections. And I really appreciated that year because it's how my medical career started. And during that year, I realized how important it was to be connected to the people who you're working with, and I realized that healing was all about human connection and empathy. So my journey in medicine began in that village clinic in rural Botswana. I am the first living girl that my parents had. So I'm the 3rd born. I have 2 older brothers and 3 younger sisters. So I'm the oldest girl, but the 3rd child. And so I've always been a mother. So I think from a very young age, I was responsible for my siblings and for children around me. And they've always been my gift. My siblings have always been my gift, and children have always been my gift. When I decided to study medicine and become a doctor, I knew that I would be a doctor for children because I love children. Children enrich my life. I studied pediatrics, and then I decided to do pediatric critical care. And when I was growing up, I never saw a pediatrician. My parents would take us to the clinic, and we would get weighed and get vaccinated, but there were never any pediatricians around. And I really think when there's no specialized healthcare, children live and die by chance. So when I studied pediatric critical care, it was essentially to be able to come back home to Botswana and to provide specialty care to children who would otherwise not be able to access that level of healthcare. My passion really is to bring tertiary healthcare to two children.